At SaaStock Remote, this March 22nd to 24th, 2,000 SaaS founders, CEOs, and execs just like you will come together and leave fully equipped with the ultimate how-to guide for SaaS. Our lineup of expert speakers, including Chris Voss, Jeffrey Moore, April Dunford, and more, will simply give you the answers to the how-to questions you've been Googling. Join the only how-to event in SaaS. Register for free by visiting saasstock.com/remote-2022.
Welcome to the SaaS Revolution Show. Andy Whyte, who's the CEO of MEDDIC. Welcome, Andy.
Hey, Alex. Great to be on the show. I've been a long-time listener, obviously a big fan of you and the community and business you've created. So it's great to be here.
Thanks, Andy. Well, great to have you on the show. And obviously, we've got you speaking at SaaStock Remote very soon. I think it's on the 23rd of March, your particular talk. So excited about that. We'll come back to that in a bit. Always great to have listeners on the show as well. I guess, Andy, we always start, with getting to know who our guest is. And then for the audience, please do to start with telling us a little bit about who is Andy Whyte.
Yeah, sure. I like that question. Who is Andy Whyte? So I guess most important things in my life, I'm a dad, husband, try to be a good friend, all that kind of good stuff. And then I guess what the audience is a little bit more interested in is, more about my professional self. And I always just describe myself as a salesperson. That's kind of what I've been doing most of my career. And I think that a lot of us are more into sales than what we probably realize as well. So I like to lean into that quite a lot. So I'm a sales guy turned founder. And yeah, I work predominantly, pretty much the entire part of my career in terms of percentage wise has been in SaaS. So selling SaaS and leading sales teams that sell SaaS.
Awesome. And what is I'm going to have to ask, I'm seeing these helmets behind you. What is the significance of those to you?
Yeah, I'm a big Formula One fan. So I love Formula One. And interestingly, I often think this is an interesting thing. As much as I like the racing, I actually really enjoy the business element behind Formula One, the kind of, the driver market, the sponsorships, the research and development race that goes on throughout the season. So for me, it's a really interesting sport from not just perspective of what happens on the track, but probably more so what happens off the track. So I love having these little miniature helmets of my favorite drivers. So we've got, everyone will be very familiar with Senna and of course the great Sir Lewis Hamilton and a number of great drivers in between.
Who's your current favorite driver? I'm sure you're probably looking forward to, the upcoming edition of Drive to Survive, but yeah, who's your current favorite driver on the circuit at the moment?
Yeah, well, actually, the answer to the second part of that question, or the second thing you said there, might actually give it away. I'm not looking forward to Drive to Survive because I am a Sir Lewis Hamilton fan.
Okay.
And I'm obviously still a bit sore about what happened at the end of last season.
Yeah. It was a quite unbelievable race, but I think I know this podcast is not about Formula One. It's about SaaS, and today we'll specifically be talking about sales. But just to note, I guess, because maybe some people can get something from it. But I was a big Formula One fan for many years throughout my childhood, my teens, probably into early 20s, and at that point, I kind of started to lose touch. Maybe because, I don't know, you get busier in life or, whatever the reasons are. And maybe more hangovers on a Sunday or something like that at that point, in time. But started to lose touch a bit. And then, recently with Formula One, and it's been on, and I'm like, I remember how much I used to love this and I kind of want to watch it, but I just don't know anybody. I don't know any of the drivers. I don't really care about them. Obviously, I know Sir Lewis Hamilton. But then I started watching because there were so many recommendations, to watch Drive to Survive, right? From, a lot of people I knew. So I started watching it, and then it just really got you kind of sucked in, and you started to care about drivers and say, oh, I really like Pierre Gasly, and, something about and so on, and get to know the drivers. And that got me back into, being a fanatic again. And I think very similar with a lot of my friends. So I think I don't know, there's probably some sort of marketing lesson there, that people can kind of get from that. Probably, people listening can articulate it themselves sort of better than me. But yeah, now I'm back into it, and I'm determined this year that I'll be going to an F1 race. I don't know where.
Great.
I'm going to go. So yeah,
I think on that point, if we dig into what inspired you and genuinely millions of people, I think, because I think Drive to Survive has been great for the sport, is storytelling. It's storytelling. And I think, we talk about that so much in our world of, startups and sales in particular. And I think what Drive to Survive did was put the stories around the sport. And, that's probably a great case study of taking something that always, it's not like Drive to Survive didn't give the drivers a script and say, right, we want you to have this saga. The sagas created themselves, and Drive to Survive told the stories. And I think that's a real skill in business as well as it is in our personal lives and things we're social about.
100%. So Andy, you've been in SaaS a large part of your life. You've been in sales for almost all your professional career. And then you decided to become a founder. I guess before we get into the company that you founded, why did you want to move from, selling other people's SaaS products and, moving from an exec SaaS role into becoming a founder?
Yeah, it's a great question that has a funny answer, which is that I didn't intend to. What my career path looked like and what my goal was, and this was up until less than a year ago, was I wanted to be a CRO, Chief Revenue Officer, in a large SaaS company. That was kind of like my sort of North Star, if you like. And I was on that path. I'd had a successful individual contributor career, and I'd moved into sales leadership, and I was starting to make my way up that ladder. And what I realized as I attended great events in our industry and webinars, all this kind of thing, was the people talking about achievements they'd had in our industry, particularly in sales. I was starting to think, well, we're doing that. We're doing a lot of that. And sometimes for me, what they're talking about as an achievement is almost like table stakes. And it left me feeling like, well, hang on a minute. How can I show the good that I'm doing more to help me towards that goal of where I want to get to in my career? So I thought, well, it's got to be about brand. So I've got to start putting myself out there. And so I started writing because that was the easiest thing to do. And I kind of figured out if I write, then, maybe if I write well, other opportunities will come from that. So I started writing about the things I knew about, things in my sales leadership playbook, things like pipeline generation, things like hiring, all the important things we know that are really important in a SaaS revenue business. And I also wrote about a methodology, a qualification framework methodology called MEDDIC, often known as MEDDPIC as well. And what I noticed was anytime I wrote about that, I got like 10x the amounts of views, and I even got lots of feedback. And I started to have this weird realization that everywhere I looked with the most elite organizations in our industry, the ones that the MongoDBs, the Sprinklers, the Snowflakes, the ones that are right at the top of the A-list of our industry, they all used MEDDIC or MEDDPIC. There was no question of doubt about that, but nobody was talking about it. No one was sort of saying, like, this is the best ways of using it. This is how you implement it. Here's like the challenges, anything like that. No one was doing that. And I thought, well, I should do more of this. And what I said to myself was, I'll write a book. And I don't know if you've ever done that. I'm sure people listening along, there's many people that thought, I've got a passion or something I'm knowledgeable about. I should write a book about that. And you might have the best intentions in the world. I've never been diagnosed, but I would bet every asset I've got in the world that I have ADHD. And so, writing a book is challenging for most people, particularly for someone with the way that I have a challenge with concentration. So I never actually thought I would do it, but I was still working towards it. And for a while, when I was, running a region of a SaaS company in EMEA, and I was flying around for customer meetings and stuff, it would be what I would do on flights because there was no Wi-Fi. And so it would be the way I passed the time. And it started to, and I just thought it would turn into a blog post. What actually happened was COVID happened. Everyone started working from home. All of a sudden, I was 4 hours a day richer because I didn't have to commute to London and back. And I thought, well, this is my time. This is the only time I'm ever going to have to do something like this. And so I got the book done. But still, for me, the book, when it came out, was supposed to be a sort of a slightly large portrait version of a business card, right? It was supposed to help me on this path I was trying to go on to be a CRO. But then as the book got more attention, more people started to talk to me about it. I thought that there's a much bigger opportunity, which was that, like I said, everybody I spoke to that was credible felt that MEDDIC was a sensational addition to their business. So many of the best organizations run on it. But there was these two kind of challenges. One was that because it's kind of open source, there's no official commercial entity behind it. There was no official kind of, you do know MEDDIC or you don't. So what you'd have is people saying they knew it, but they didn't actually have a decent level of understanding. And then there's a second challenge around like operationalizing. I always struggle with that word, operationalizing it, which is where you bring it into your sales process and you bring it into your everyday thing. So I thought there was a big opportunity there, which kind of took me off the path I was on, and thought, well, I could probably create something here. And then it's sort of just gone from there, really. So it wasn't ever my intention. It was more organic from spotting an opportunity and leaning into that to help me towards my career goal, and then seeing that there was a much bigger opportunity there to help organizations.
Awesome. And then I guess kind of for those that are listening, like, what does MEDDIC stand for? Like, I'm assuming it's an acronym. Probably a good start to point. A good point to start even. And then, from there, maybe let's kind of like dive into that. So we say, like, some of the top SaaS companies are using it. Let's learn, why are they using it? What does it do? What are the benefits of it, et cetera? And just kind of take us through it like step by step.
Yeah, sure thing. So the best way I've kind of come around to describing what MEDDIC is, and as you say, is an acronym, hence why there's also MEDDPIC, which is just including a P as well, and we'll get to that. The best way I think of describing it is to orientate everyone's minds back to what's really critical when we're focusing on selling to customers. And for me, it's three things. The first is selling on value, particularly in our industry where we're selling more complex or value-driven solutions. So the first thing is value. The second thing is stakeholders, and of course, there's a lot of crossover with value and stakeholders, because if you're selling, let's say you're selling a technology that a lot of people would understand, listening, something like an advertising marketing technology. So to the marketeer, the value you're selling is that it's going to help them get more leads or more brand awareness or something like that. Whereas to the CFO, the value you're selling to them is you might be able to save them some money on their advertising spend, kind of thing. So even though there's the same value there, it's different people have different perceptions of what the value is. So that's where the stakeholders come in the first part. The second part is, of course, deals these days, opportunities these days have multiple stakeholders. So it's about understanding who is involved, what they care about, and engaging with them appropriately on that basis. And then the third part is around the process. And it's the often forgotten about part of sales, which is, if we were to, I always say this, if we were to open LinkedIn right now and start scrolling through either of our feeds, I would put lots of money on the table to say that we would find hundreds of posts about demand generation, about cold calling, about videos, emails, all that sort of stuff. We'd probably find, 1 in every 50 about value creation around, conversion rates and around average order value. We'd never find anything about the time it takes to close opportunities, which actually is probably one of the most impactful levers for a software company, is how quickly can you close those opportunities you're going to win. So process is a big part of it. And also another part of process is, if you think about so often what we're doing now, we're working outbound. We're sparking the interest with our customers, and before we do that, our customers don't even know that they need us or that they could value from our solutions. So that part of the process is actually, how do we get somebody from being sort of a spark of interest into turning it into a proper project that and then right through to procuring it through to going live. So those three sort of pillars, if you like, value, stakeholders, and process, I don't think anyone would argue are critically important in sales. But if you say to, somebody like, a founder who is, ultimately most commonly the first salesperson for an organization, you just need to focus on value. You need to focus on the stakeholders and the process. It's like, what do you do with that, right? So where I think MEDDPIC really, really helps is that each letter correlates to different parts of those three pillars and almost provides like a framework for the person to follow. So if we just go through it, I'll go through how the acronym works. So metrics, that's the quantification of the value that your solution provides. That's, if you imagine the before situation, before your solution, and then the after situation, the struggle, and then the utopia state afterwards, what's the delta of value between the two? Is it an increase on revenue of X? Is it an increase on efficiency? That's the metrics. The economic buyer is the second letter, and that's the overall authority. That's the person who has veto power on your deal. People often mistake this for being the budget owner. It's the person above the budget owner. It's the person that creates the budget for the budget owner is probably the best way of describing it. So it's really important you engage with that person because they can have a really big impact on the success of your opportunity. Then you've got 2 Ds. The first one is decision criteria. This is when a customer is making their decision, what are they basing their decision on? What's their decision criteria? And the most elite salespeople don't just focus on making sure that their solution matches the customer's decision criteria. They focus on influencing the customer to see the world the way that they see the world, align with their vision, so that your decision criteria as the vendor becomes the decisions criteria, the customer's decision criteria. And then we're into the process side of things. So that's the first D, which is decision process. That's what I said a second ago. How do we go from an idea of a spark of an interest through to the buying process, through to the closing process, through to the, whatever happens thereafter. And then the addition to that, why MEDDIC becomes MEDDPIC, is paper process. And that's just come around because when MEDDIC was created, I think in 1995, you didn't have SaaS, you didn't have cloud, you didn't have DPAs, SLA, all these additional 3-letter acronyms, funnily enough, that make our jobs harder to get contracts signed, didn't exist. And it's the number one reason why deals don't close on time is because of the paper process. So drawing out an additional letter draws additional attention to it, which therefore means that more focus means more attention and less likely of deals slipping as a result. So that's the paper process. Then you're into the I, which is often classed and was originally classed as identify the pain. For me, I say the word implicate the pain because I don't think it's enough to simply identify pain. I think we have to get deeper. We need to implicate the pain in the customer's eyes so that they want to take action, so they feel urgency. So there's a difference there for me. Then we're up to the first of 2 C's. The first C is champion, which I think most of the audience listening will understand the concept of having a champion, which is someone in the customer's business that's championing you. In MEDDIC, how it's different is it's a very clear criteria. It's 3 things. They have to have power and influence. They have to be selling internally for you, and they have to have a vested interest in your success. So it's really clear. If you don't have those 3 criteria, it's okay. They're still a useful person. We need to find someone that has those 3 things to be our champion. And then the last one, competition, which might sound really obvious. You think about your rival solutions. For me, it's much more than that. Competition is any one person, thing, initiative, project that's going to rival your project, your deal for the same budget and or resources. So I've lost a deal before of selling some software, some marketing software. I didn't lose it, actually, it slipped, but it was pushed down the priorities list because the project manager who was going to run the implementation had been moved to manage an office refit. So you'd never class an office refit as competition for SaaS, but it was competition for me because I lost the battle. For some reason, that was seen as more urgent internally. So I got pushed down the urgency. So, competition, and that can also be, building internally. It can be other initiatives that may, so often in SaaS nowadays, you think about the Venn diagram of how many people kind of cross over what we do. It can be one of those solutions as well. So it's really important to I always say, stay on the front foot with all of those things.
Awesome. But picking up on a couple of the letters in the acronym, the implicate pain thing that was very sort of interesting. Can you give an example of how you would do that? Maybe we'll start with that.
Yeah, great point. So for me, the difference, and if I sort of define this a little bit, I actually put 3 I's together. I talk about identifying the pain, indicating the pain, and then implicating the pain. And the difference between those 3 in SaaS terms is identifying the pain is where the salesperson sort of stumbles across something. And I say stumble because you can genuinely just stumble across it. It doesn't take much skill, I think, to uncover these things. And that's just, you've got this problem. Okay, great. Let me hurry up and jump to slide 17 so I can show you how we solve that problem. And okay, that's okay. It's better than not finding the problem, but it's not great. Indicating is what we do. I would say I wouldn't even say it's best practice anymore. I'd say it's like table stakes now, which is where we talk about ROI. We do business cases and things like that. So that's saying, Mr. and Mrs. Customer, you've got this pain. This is how much it's costing you. Here's the numbers that back it up based on benchmark data or our own research or something like that. The implication is where you do all those 2 things and then you make the customer feel so implicated by the pain they absolutely have to take action. And so to your question of how we get there, for me, it is all around discovery. It's all around, but when I think about discovery, I think about it from a perspective of a 2-way conversation. So it's not an interrogation. For me to do effective discovery, I need to be having a conversation with you, and I need to be able to have your trust to be able to dig deeper and deeper and deeper. So I call this like two-sided discovery, where one-sided discovery is where I'm extracting information out from you, so I can therefore use it in my sales pitch to show you why my solution is appropriate for you. Two-sided discovery is where I do that, but in the process of doing that, I also make you feel the pain of the situation. So as you're starting to talk to me about your situation, and all I'm really doing is just digging deeper. I'm just, the most basic part of discovery is just to kind of echo back what you say or reflect on what you say and ask you, questions just to get a little bit deeper. It's not, there's not any special script or anything like that. It's just asking the customer, what does that mean? And just almost, I'm sure many people have heard of Chris Voss, the former FBI negotiator. He calls this mirroring, where you just reflect back what the customer says. They say, we've got a problem with downtime on our website. And you say, you've got a problem with downtime on your website? And they go, yeah, it's costing us, it's going down at least once a day. It's going down once a day. Yeah. And it's costing us 5% of our revenue. 5% of your revenue, and all of a sudden you're just, and by them answering that, they're getting more and more implicated in the pain that you solve. And of course, you won't get here. This is all very easily said. You won't get to this point where you're able to dig in like that and have the customer open up to you unless you've been able to be seen by that customer as being authentic and genuine and trustworthy. And they're not just going to tell you all their problems because they want you to do a better pitch for them. They're going to tell you problems if they feel like you can genuinely offer them value and solutions to helping them, which is, of course, that's a bit of a catch-22, which, by the way, I didn't intend for this to be an advert, but that's kind of what I'm talking about in my SaaStock talk coming up later this month. So yeah, I promise you that wasn't intended to be an advert, but you asked the question that took me there.
Yeah, awesome. And we'll jump onto that, the specific talk in a bit. And so, in terms of MEDDICC and MEDDPIC, are these, would you say, logically really just for the complex sale, more mid to enterprise, or are you seeing any of this kind of used in a more kind of SMB sort of way as well within SaaS?
Great question. So historically, it's been more towards the complex enterprise sale. But then again, what is an enterprise sale today, right? Some people do it based on the amount of employees. Some people do it in the amount of revenue. Some people do it, if you think about it, I always use this example. If I am selling an e-commerce solution to a company that has 1,000 employees or a billion of revenue, you'd assume it's enterprise. But if I'm selling that e-commerce solution to BT so they can use it internally so staff can order, high-vis jackets, it's probably not so much of an enterprise sale. So I always kind of want to dig deeper into what that is. For me, if you go back to those 3 pillars, if it's important that you focus on uncovering and illustrating the value, and there's multiple stakeholders, and then there's going to be a process, even if it's a short process, that's where MEDDPIC can really, really help. So I have organizations that have, large organizations that have all of those divisions, like named accounts that are, 1 or 2 accounts per salesperson, to the enterprise where they have 20 accounts, to the sort of the commercial where they may have 50, 100 accounts, through to the SMB, as you would say, SME, where people have 1,000 accounts and they still use MEDDPIC, but they just use it relative to the complexity. They use it relative to the depth of the sales process. So they may not go as far at like building out certain parts of it, but they will still focus on those components to help them stay on the front foot.
Awesome. And I guess for the listeners, say this is not in any way intended to be an advert for you, but just to understand, how are you working with SaaS companies? What is the benefits? If you're saying that MEDDICC is open source, it's been around since 1995, but you've written the book now, kind of on MEDDICC. Is it that, people read the book and this is the benefit that they get, or like, what is the value in the relationship that you have with SaaS founders, SaaS companies?
Yeah, good question. So I think one of the things, like I was the reason why I ended up on this path, was that there's no sort of question, as I said, with anyone that's credible about MEDDIC as a fit for sales. There is a real shortage of people helping organizations to be enabled on it. So there's a few consultancies out there that kind of will come in and help train your team to use MEDDIC, and they do a very good job. And that's a good thing if you've got your team together. But then the ongoing enablement, the ongoing operationalization of it, got it right that time, all those types of things are more challenging, I think, today. So what we are doing is helping organizations to not just know what MEDDIC is, not just know what those letters are, but bring it into reality with real tactics, real strategies. That means that you can bring them into your pipeline straight away. You can use the methodology straight away. And what that means is that it becomes much more actionable. And one of the goals that organizations want to get to with MEDDIC, and one of the great benefits of it is it becomes like a common language that you use across your revenue team to talk about customers, to talk about opportunities. And the more people using it, the more people using the tactics around it, the more it becomes a common language. And then you get all of the benefits with it, which is like a cohesive conversation. You get very concise updates. You start to have the way that we describe life without MEDDIC is you kind of have this uncertainty when you think about your deals. You suspect things that you don't know. So you have this deal uncertainty. We talk about afterwards that you have, visibility in where you are with the deal. You have control in where you are with the deal. So it's kind of command and control of the two kind of parts you get afterwards. So what we're very much helping organizations to do is to bring everyone up to that level where everyone is kind of fluent in the language, so that they can then be empowered to kind of use it across internal meetings, and then taking it to opportunities as well to keep themselves on the front foot.
What would you say is the hardest thing about selling SaaS, selling a SaaS product?
Well, I think it's a very noisy world out there right now. I have a friend who was formerly head of e-commerce at a large online retailer, and he showed me his inbox, and it was just, if you do the search for like SDR or BDR, it was just like every day, just a wall of emails to him, and some of them were really good. He just never had the time to get to them. So I think we've got this situation where our customers are much busier than they've been before. They have more responsibilities. They have more options. And what happens with that is it's not just about capturing their attention, but what also I think is happening is the dilution of their knowledge of technology. Because, instead of knowing 10 marketing technologies like they would have done years ago, there's now 100 or 1,000 of them that they should know about. And so they just won't know. And so for me, the hardest thing about selling SaaS nowadays is creating urgency, and then keeping that urgency is one challenge. So you can get in front of an ideal customer, and you can create some urgency about a pain that you can solve and some value you can provide. But that's the first thing, is keeping that urgency. The second challenge is around the differentiation of that urgency. What's to stop you going in, doing you and your team doing a genius job of capturing somebody's attention, going in where they never thought about a solution like yours before. You go in, you do a brilliant A-star job of talking to that customer and getting them to buy into thinking, yeah, actually, we hadn't thought about this, but this would add lots of value. And then they go, well, we always have to look at 2 other providers. That's our company policy, which is common sense, let's be honest. And so they bring in your 2 rivals, and your rivals come in and go, oh, cool, you want to do that? Yeah, we can do that as well. So it's around differentiation. It's not just creating urgency, but it's like differentiated urgency, so that the customer, when they go to see those other 2 rivals of yours, those rivals are automatically on the back foot because the customer has been influenced. And that, by the way, the word influence, I think, always sounds like we're misselling. We're not. If I always say this, if you're selling for a company, whether you're a founder, and obviously this would be the case if you are a founder or you're a salesperson, you should absolutely believe that your solution is the best for your customer. And you should, if you don't believe that, you should either leave that company or you shouldn't be talking to that customer. So when we talk about influencing, we're talking about for the right reasons. So we should go into that situation, create urgency, and then differentiate that urgency so that the value is either unique, as in only we can provide that value, or only we can provide value in that way. So when your rivals go in, they're on the back foot. But though that's easily said, much more difficult to achieve. So I think that's the hardest thing that's out there for selling SaaS right now.
In fact, thanks for sharing that. And we or you touched on the fact on your talk that you're speaking at SaaStock Remote on March 23rd, which is a online conference. We've got a lot of great speakers there, specialists. We've gone for something a little bit different this time. I think typically if you look at a SaaStock conference, whether online or in person, we often have, the top unicorn SaaS founders, within Europe and sometimes globally, a lot of operators and, founders that are in the seats, a lot of VCs. But sometimes or less often, we don't have, let's say, the specialists, who is the best in product management, who is the influencers and the thought leaders on sales and demand generation, and who are the founders, who are the listeners of this podcast, reading and listening to. So we come up with the SaaStock Remote, and really the concept is how to build, an unbeatable SaaS business. A lot of how-to conversations, or pretty much all of the talks will be short, sharp how-to conversations. So what is your talk? What's the title of your talk? Who should be interested in attending that?
Yeah, you've got me there. I can't remember what the title is. I think you and your excellent editing team took my probably rather vague sounding title and sexed it up a little bit. So have you got it there? I'll tell you what it's about.
I think if I had one of my 75 tabs kind of open, but I'd find it. But we'll probably drop it in the show notes to maybe regarding the specific title. But I guess in general, beyond the title, like what will you be talking about, and who should that be interesting for?
Sure. What I'm talking about is how there is a challenge that exists today where we as salespeople, we understand the critical importance. And when I say salespeople, I'm talking broadly about anyone, even founders in early stage. There's this real challenge we have where we know the importance of understanding our customers' challenges, goals, problems, all that sort of stuff. But actually getting to a point where the customers are happy to engage with us and share those problems with us is a challenge, and it becomes a catch-22 because the customers don't want to tell us about their challenges and goals until they realize that we can help them solve those challenges and goals. And that's a catch-22, right? Because we can't prove that we can solve the goals until we know what they are. And so it creates this predicament where sellers either launch into discovery, which is a bit like interrogation because the customer doesn't want it. So they're just asking, what's keeping you awake at night, and all those kinds of questions, or they dive straight into a pitch. And neither of those are good strategies. So my talk is about how actually there is a tried and tested, in fact, it's probably the nucleus of sales in your company method in order to get customers to truly understand the value you provide in a manner that they want to hear about, that's going to open them up straight away into wanting to discuss with you how you can help them solve those problems, because you will have instant credibility. And from there, of course, it's the perfect platform to build value and build a sales opportunity around. So that's kind of the talk. It's about how can we get away from this catch-22 of kind of interrogation / discovery and more into value-based conversations based on something that the founders of the company may have initially started doing, and then you kind of have that founder gap when founders hand over the reins to the sales team, and then they tend to falter, or they generally don't sell as well as the founder does. So how can we solve that gap a little bit and keep that kind of momentum that the founder salesperson's built up?
Awesome. Well, I mean, I'll be hosting the event, so I'll definitely be tuning in. But for those that are listening, if that sounds kind of interesting, SaaStock Remote is a free to attend event. It's for founders, it's for execs. Please do go to SaaStock.com/remote and check it out and sign up. It's going to be a great 2 days there. And Andy, just kind of as it comes to the end now, where can people find MEDDIC, find you online if they wanted to reach out?
Yeah, so we're at MEDDIC.com, and you can do MEDDIC with, as long as you put 2 Ds in the MEDDIC, you'll find us. And best place to find me is probably on LinkedIn or Twitter. I'm at Whyte UK, and I'm sorry, but my surname is spelt with a Y, not an I, which is probably, as much as that's an inconvenience for you, I assure you it's more of an inconvenience for me. And of course, a good place to get started with if this has piqued your interest, would be our YouTube channel. So that's obviously completely free, completely open. If you want to find out a little bit more about what we do, head on over to YouTube and type in MEDDIC, and I'm sure you'll find us. Final
question is because I'm just curious about this. So as you say, MEDDIC first written about in 1995, sort of roughly. but you've got MEDDICC.com. So when you search for that on GoDaddy or whatever it was, MEDDICC.com, like, was that available? Did you have to buy it or somebody, or was that like, hey, I can't believe nobody's registered this?
Yeah.
Today?
It's well, there's a couple of things here. There's one, which is that like I said, when I started, I was just going to write a book to help my career. So I wasn't really thinking business orientated. So I just thought, well, I'm writing a book about MEDDIC. I should get the best .com I can. And there's 3 variations of MEDDIC. There's MEDDIC 2Ds, 1C, MEDDIC 2Ds, 2Cs, and then there's MEDDPIC as well. And MEDDIC.com with 2Ds and 2Cs was free. So I was like, well, that's it then. That's what I'll call the book, even though I've always practiced MEDDPIC. So that's the first thing. And then the second thing was MEDDIC.com with 1C, which is kind of the original, and that's probably the way that most people refer to the methodology, was not available. And it was one of these funny things, which I'm sure a ton of the listeners will relate to. It was being sat on by a domain squatter. And when I Googled this domain squatter, it was just, if you Googled the person's name, it was just hundreds of these court cases where people are taking the domain squatter to court and won the case back. And I'm looking at this going, well, how much would it cost me to do this? Because I don't really have any rights to the name as much as the next person at this point, right? So I paid. I put an offer in, actually. I think I put an offer in of probably about 75% of what the list price was, and got it. So, but yeah, I'm sure a lot of people listening along, as founders, we love the domain name. We probably spend more time on picking the domain name and the company name than we should. So that's my story with that one.
Good stuff. All right. Well, thanks for ending the show with that story. As I guess we started on storytelling with the drive to survive in Formula One. But been great speaking to you. Looking forward to March the 23rd and your talk at SaaStock Remote. And thanks so much, Andy Whyte, CEO of MEDDIC.
Thanks, Alex.